Yesterday she shot herself. I'm gonna burn this place to the ground.
One man did this.
I corrected.
Copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright Act 1976. Allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, scholarship, and research. Fair use is a use permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. Nonprofit, educational, or personal use tips the balance in favor of fair use.
The Beekeeper is an action thriller film released in 2024, directed by David Ayer and written by Kurt Wimmer. It stars Jason Statham in the lead role as Adam Clay, a quiet, unassuming beekeeper whose life is upended by tragedy and betrayal. The film is a co-production between the United States and the United Kingdom and was produced by Miramax, Cedar Park Entertainment, and Punch Palace Productions, with distribution by Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer in the US and Sky Cinema in the UK. With a runtime of approximately 105 minutes, the film blends high-octane action with elements of suspense, mystery, and revenge, exploring themes of justice, loss, and the hidden undercurrents of power in society. The music is composed by David Sardi and Jared Michael Fry, with cinematography by Gabriel Beristain and editing by Jeffrey O'Brien. The film had a production budget of around $40 million and has grossed approximately $162.6 million worldwide, marking it as both a commercial success and a strong addition to the action thriller genre. The story of The Beekeeper revolves around Adam Clay, who leads a quiet, peaceful life caring for his bees on the rural property of an elderly woman named Eloise Parker. Eloise, a warm and kind-hearted retired woman, treats Adam almost like family. Their tranquil existence is shattered when Eloise falls victim to a sophisticated phishing scam that drains over $2 million from her personal accounts, including funds intended for a charitable cause she supports. The shock and despair from the financial and emotional loss become unbearable for Eloise, and tragically, she takes her own life. Adam discovers her body, and this devastating event becomes the catalyst that propels him into a dangerous journey of revenge and justice. The narrative explores Adam's transformation from a humble, peaceful beekeeper into a vigilante-like figure who confronts corruption and deceit head-on. Adam's involvement with the tragic events introduces him to Verona Parker, Eloise's daughter, and an FBI agent. Initially, she suspects Adam's involvement in her mother's death and arrests him. However, the truth of Eloise's suicide soon comes to light, and Adam is released, though the experience leaves him deeply affected. Determined to seek justice for Eloise, Adam turns to a secretive organization known as the Beekeepers, a clandestine group of former operatives who live off the grid and operate under strict codes of ethics and skill. With their guidance and support, Adam begins to unravel the network behind the phishing scam that destroyed Eloise's life. The story escalates as Adam tracks the scammers to a call center, where he confronts them violently, destroying the facility and eliminating several of the perpetrators. Through this violent and relentless pursuit, Adam uncovers a deeper conspiracy that links the scam not just to criminal elements but to powerful figures in politics and society. The mastermind behind the entire scheme is revealed to be Derek Danforth, a politically connected individual whose influence and ruthlessness allow him to manipulate systems for personal gain. The narrative tension heightens as Adam learns that Derek's mother, Jessica Danforth, holds a prominent political position, serving as the President of the United States, which complicates Adam's mission and raises the stakes considerably. Adam's pursuit leads to a climactic confrontation at the Danforth's coastal mansion. Infiltrating the heavily guarded estate, Adam encounters multiple layers of security, including mercenaries, counter-assault teams, and Secret Service agents. During the confrontation, Derek openly admits to orchestrating the phishing scams and manipulating algorithms and political systems for his advantage, revealing the breadth of his corruption. He even attempts to eliminate his own mother to protect his secrets, but Adam intervenes, ultimately killing Derek. Verona Parker, who witnesses Adam's actions, confronts him, but recognizing the complexity and moral ambiguity of the situation, she allows him to go free. The final scene shows Adam retrieving a hidden scuba diving suit and disappearing into the sea, suggesting that his story is far from over and leaving open the possibility of future missions or a sequel. The cast includes notable performances from Jason Statham as Adam Clay, Emmy Raver-Lampman as FBI agent Verona Parker, Josh Hutcherson as antagonist Derek Danforth, Felicia Rashad as Eloise Parker, and Jeremy Irons as Wallace Westwild, a former CIA operative. The ensemble delivers strong performances, with Statham portraying a nuanced blend of calm intelligence and lethal precision, while Hutcherson embodies the charm and menace of a corrupt power broker. The interactions between Adam and Verona bring both tension and subtle emotional depth to the story, highlighting themes of trust, justice, and moral ambiguity. Production of the film took place primarily in England, with locations including Tyringham Hall and Kingsferry Bridge. Jason Statham immersed himself in the role by learning actual beekeeping techniques, and real bees were used in filming to enhance authenticity. David Ayer's direction emphasizes kinetic action sequences, tightly choreographed fight scenes, and suspenseful pacing, while Kurt Wimmer's screenplay combines contemporary digital crime elements with classic revenge thriller tropes. The filmmakers aimed to blend realism with stylized action, creating a tension-filled narrative that explores both personal grief and societal corruption. The themes of The Beekeeper are multifaceted. On one level, the film explores the devastating impact of digital crime and phishing scams, highlighting the vulnerabilities of individuals in an increasingly interconnected and digitalized world. On another level, the metaphor of bees and the beekeeper's organization reflects the idea of community, protection, and organized retaliation against those who disrupt societal balance. Adam Clay's transformation from a quiet, peaceful individual to a decisive, vengeful operative underscores themes of justice, loss, and moral responsibility. The narrative also raises questions about the abuse of power, political corruption, and the ethical dilemmas involved in taking justice into one's own hands. The release of the film began theatrically on January 12, 2024, in both the United States and the United Kingdom. It was later made available for streaming on Sky Cinema in the UK, followed by a digital and VOD release on January 30, 2024. Home media releases, including DVD, Blu-ray, and Ultra HD, became available on April 23, 2024. Marketing for the film included an official trailer, posters, and promotional campaigns emphasizing Jason Statham's return to the action thriller genre and the film's blend of suspense, action, and digital age intrigue. The official trailer showcased high-energy fight sequences, tense confrontations, and the visual metaphor of bees, capturing both the film's stylistic approach and thematic resonance. Critics generally gave The Beekeeper a positive reception. It holds a score of approximately 71% on Rotten Tomatoes, indicating favorable reviews, while audience reactions were strong, particularly praising the film's pacing, action sequences, and Statham's performance. While some critics noted that the plot was occasionally predictable, the film's execution, energy, and contemporary relevance kept viewers engaged. Its box office performance, grossing $162.6 million worldwide against a $40 million budget, marked it as a financial success, further solidifying its impact as a commercially viable and entertaining action thriller. The film's success and narrative structure have led to discussions about a sequel, with potential storylines involving Adam Clay continuing his work with the Beekeepers and confronting new threats in an increasingly complex and dangerous world. The metaphor of bees and the structure of the secret organization provides fertile ground for expansion, allowing future films to explore deeper espionage elements, global-scale conspiracies, and the ongoing evolution of Adam's character. Overall, The Beekeeper stands out as a contemporary action thriller that combines traditional revenge-driven narratives with modern concerns about digital crime, political corruption, and societal vulnerability. Jason Statham delivers a compelling performance that balances stoicism with intensity, while the supporting cast provides emotional and narrative depth. The film's pacing, action choreography, and visual storytelling make it engaging for a wide audience, and its thematic resonance ensures that it is not merely a spectacle but a commentary on justice, morality, and human resilience in the face of personal and societal betrayal. From the quiet moments in the apiary to the explosive climactic sequences at the Danforth mansion, the film provides a complete and satisfying narrative journey that engages viewers on multiple levels, blending action, suspense, and emotional weight seamlessly. The narrative's careful layering of plot, character development, and thematic exploration ensures that The Beekeeper is both entertaining and thought-provoking, providing a compelling entry in the modern action thriller canon and leaving audiences eager for potential continuation in future installments. The Beekeeper opens with a serene aerial view of lush English countryside, the camera drifting slowly over fields and winding rivers until it settles on a modest, well-kept rural property. Here lives Adam Clay, portrayed with calm intensity by Jason Statham. Adam is a man who blends into his environment, his hands are steady and sure, moving gently through the hives that define his quiet life. The opening scenes immediately establish him as someone who is disciplined, patient, and in tune with nature. His daily routine is meticulous, tending to bees, collecting honey, repairing hives, and ensuring that the delicate ecosystems he oversees are balanced. The narrative takes its time in these moments, emphasizing the contrast between Adam's peaceful existence and the chaos that will soon invade it. It is not only a meditation on his character but also a careful establishment of tone, showing viewers the calm before a storm. The bees themselves are presented almost as characters in their own right, buzzing with purpose, communicating in subtle ways, and reflecting the organized, intricate systems that Adam himself lives by. This attention to detail signals to the audience that even in a story propelled by action, there is care taken to ground the narrative in real-world textures and rhythms. Adam's relationship with Eloise Parker, played with warmth and gravitas by Felicia Rashad, is central to the first act. Eloise is more than a landlady, she is a mentor, a maternal figure, and a link to a world of decency and stability that Adam values deeply. Their interactions are gentle and familial. Adam respects her wisdom, listens carefully to her advice, and subtly demonstrates that his life, though solitary, is rich in meaningful human connections. Their conversations often take place amid the hives, the bees serving as both literal and symbolic witnesses to the development of Adam's character. Eloise is portrayed as a woman of principle and dignity, someone who has lived through challenges and understands the fragility of trust. This characterization is crucial, as the film will later pivot around the tragic consequences of her being deceived by forces outside her world. The inciting incident arrives subtly but with devastating impact. Eloise becomes the victim of a sophisticated phishing scam, executed with precision by an unseen network of criminals. The film takes time to illustrate the nature of the scam, showing Eloise reviewing what she believes to be legitimate financial communications. The scammer's manipulations are realistic, reflecting contemporary fears of digital fraud. As she realizes the enormity of her losses, over $2 million, including money designated for charitable purposes, the emotional weight becomes palpable. Eloise's despair is conveyed through quiet moments, her hand trembling over a checkbook, a lingering gaze at her lifework, and private tears in solitude. These scenes are juxtaposed against the buzzing, indifferent life of the bees, reinforcing a thematic tension between the natural order and human vulnerability. The narrative, careful in its pacing, ensures that viewers understand Eloise's psychological trajectory, preparing the audience for the emotional stakes that will drive Adam's later actions. Tragically, Eloise's grief overwhelms her, and she takes her own life. Adam's discovery of her body is a moment of profound narrative shift. The film does not shy away from the emotional gravity of this event, allowing the silence, the framing of the scene, and Statham's restrained yet expressive performance to convey the weight of loss. Adam's grief is compounded not only by personal sorrow but by a sense of responsibility. He feels he has failed to protect someone who trusted him and who represented the stability and morality of the life he cherishes. These initial scenes are critical in establishing the moral foundation of the film. Adam's subsequent actions are framed as driven not by greed or ambition, but by justice, loyalty, and a deeply personal sense of honor. Adam's encounter with Verona Parker, Eloise's daughter and an FBI agent portrayed by Emmy Raver-Lampman, introduces an immediate tension between law, morality, and personal justice. Verona initially suspects Adam of involvement in her mother's death, resulting in a brief arrest and interrogation. The film handles this sequence with a nuanced understanding of procedural dynamics, portraying the FBI's investigative methods while maintaining narrative tension. The scene highlights both Adam's intelligence and his vulnerability. He is physically capable, highly trained, but emotionally raw. As the truth of Eloise's suicide emerges, Verona releases Adam, but the encounter leaves both characters marked. This early interaction sets up a complex relationship that will oscillate between mistrust, reluctant cooperation, and eventual recognition of shared purpose. It also allows the audience to appreciate the ethical gray areas that the film explores, the tension between institutional justice and personal vengeance, the limitations of legal systems in addressing real-world harm, and the moral ambiguities inherent in taking direct action against wrongdoers. Driven by grief and a sense of moral obligation, Adam seeks out the Beekeepers, a clandestine network of former operatives who live under strict ethical codes and remain hidden from public scrutiny. The introduction of this organization shifts the narrative from personal tragedy to organized action. The Beekeepers are more than a plot device, they are a thematic extension of the hive metaphor established in the opening scenes. Their operations are precise, disciplined, and coordinated, mirroring the structured chaos of a bee colony. The organization serves as both mentor and support system for Adam, offering tools, information, and strategic guidance while reinforcing the narrative's exploration of loyalty, community, and moral purpose. This section of the film blends exposition with suspense, using tightly choreographed sequences to show the Beekeepers in action without slowing the story's momentum. Adam's training and interactions with the group underscore his transformation from a passive caretaker to an active agent of justice. The escalation to direct confrontation with the scammers is handled with deliberate pacing. Adam tracks the perpetrators to a call center, and the film depicts the action sequence with both intensity and cinematic clarity. The attack is precise, methodical, and violent, yet grounded in the logic of the character and narrative. Adam does not act out of reckless impulse, his actions are calculated, reflecting both his training and moral reasoning. The destruction of the call center is not simply spectacle, it is a visual and narrative manifestation of Adam's commitment to restoring balance, punishing wrongdoing, and protecting the innocent. The sequence also serves as a narrative bridge, connecting personal vengeance with broader societal stakes, highlighting the reach and sophistication of the antagonists. As Adam progresses in his investigation, he uncovers the depth and sophistication of the criminal network behind the phishing scams. It is revealed that Derek Danforth, played by Josh Hutcherson, is the mastermind orchestrating these crimes. Derek's character is multi-layered, charming, manipulative, and ruthless, with a keen understanding of both political and technological systems. The film presents him not as a one-dimensional villain but as a representation of systemic corruption. His motivations are rooted in greed, power, and a perverse sense of entitlement, and the screenplay ensures that the audience comprehends the scope of his influence. Derek is not only a criminal operating in the shadows, he is intimately connected to institutions of authority, most notably his mother, Jessica Danforth, the President of the United States. This connection elevates the stakes exponentially, transforming Adam's mission from a personal vendetta into a confrontation with entrenched power structures. The narrative tension intensifies as Adam begins to map out Derek's network, which includes mercenaries, corporate insiders, and compromised government officials. Each discovery is framed cinematically to highlight both the danger and the strategic acumen required for Adam's next steps. Scenes are meticulously choreographed to emphasize suspense, Adam observing from a distance, decoding signals, and making calculated moves without being detected. The film utilizes cinematography to its full advantage here, long tracking shots, tight close-ups, and dynamic angles immerse the audience in Adam's perspective, conveying both his skill and the constant threat of exposure. The infiltration of the Danforth estate serves as the narrative and action centerpiece of the film. The estate is portrayed as an architectural marvel, symbolic of power, privilege, and isolation. Adam approaches under the cover of night, emphasizing stealth and precision over brute force. Every movement, decision, and tactical choice is informed by his extensive training and understanding of human behavior. The film interweaves tension and action seamlessly, allowing viewers to experience the danger, anticipation, and strategic complexity of Adam's mission. Encountering Derek's mercenaries triggers a series of intense action sequences, hand-to-hand combat, gunfights, and calculated maneuvers, where Adam's skills are showcased not merely for spectacle but as an extension of his character's logic, intelligence, and moral clarity. The confrontation between Adam and Derek is both physical and psychological. Derek, confident in his ability to manipulate systems and people, underestimates Adam's resourcefulness and determination. Their dialogue is sharp and revealing, exposing Derek's worldview and ethical blindness while highlighting Adam's measured approach to justice. This exchange is pivotal in establishing Derek as a credible and formidable antagonist while simultaneously reinforcing Adam's moral framework. The audience witnesses not only the physical stakes of the encounter but also the ideological battle between order and corruption, integrity and manipulation. Verona Parker's role during this climax is equally critical. As an FBI agent, she operates under legal and ethical constraints that Adam deliberately circumvents. Her interactions with Adam oscillate between suspicion, professional duty, and moral recognition of his actions. The film invests significant narrative time in exploring this dynamic, emphasizing the tension between institutional authority and individual agency. Verona's internal struggle and eventual reluctant acceptance of Adam's methods underscore one of the film's central thematic explorations, the ethical gray area of personal justice in a flawed system. The final showdown culminates in a tense sequence where Derek attempts to leverage his mother's position to escape accountability. Adam's infiltration of the mansion, his confrontation with mercenaries, and the climactic duel with Derek combine high-intensity action with precise narrative payoff. The sequence is visually and emotionally charged, balancing suspense with the audience's investment in Adam's quest. Derek's demise at Adam's hands is both a narrative resolution and a thematic statement, demonstrating the consequences of corruption and the potency of determined, morally guided action. The film does not glorify violence, instead, it frames Adam's actions as calculated, necessary, and justified within the moral universe established from the opening act. The narrative concludes with Adam retrieving a hidden scuba diving suit from the estate's coastal perimeter, disappearing into the sea. This final image serves multiple functions. It provides closure to the immediate narrative while leaving open the possibility of continuation, symbolizing Adam's ongoing commitment to justice beyond institutional oversight. The ending reinforces the film's thematic emphasis on vigilance, adaptability, and the enduring tension between personal ethics and societal constraints. Thematic and symbolic analysis permeates the film. The recurring motif of bees and beekeeping serves as an extended metaphor for organization, vigilance, and collective action. Adam's role as a beekeeper reflects both patience and strategic thinking, traits he employs when confronting human threats. The beekeeper's organization mirrors a hive structure, emphasizing coordinated action and mutual protection, while the intrusion of external threats into this system symbolizes the disruption caused by human greed, deception, and corruption. The film consistently contrasts the natural, orderly world of the bees with the chaotic, morally ambiguous human world, creating a visual and conceptual metaphor that enriches the narrative. Psychologically, Adam's journey is compelling. His grief over Eloise's death serves as a catalyst for transformation, but his actions are not merely reactive. He is methodical, reflective, and driven by principles established early in the narrative. His interactions with the beekeepers, his strategic planning, and his moral discernment all demonstrate a character who balances emotional depth with tactical intelligence. This depth distinguishes the film from typical action thrillers, giving it a character-driven core that resonates emotionally with viewers. Production insights reveal meticulous attention to authenticity and detail. Jason Statham's immersion in beekeeping, the use of real bees, and the choice of filming locations in England contribute to the film's visual and thematic coherence. Director David Ayer's emphasis on kinetic action, suspenseful pacing, and dynamic visual storytelling ensures that the action sequences serve the narrative rather than overshadow it. Cinematographer Gabriel Berestein's work enhances the film's aesthetic, using lighting, camera movement, and composition to underscore thematic contrasts between natural order and human chaos. Music by David Sardi and Jared Michael Fry supports the tension and emotional beats without overwhelming the visual narrative, subtly reinforcing suspense and dramatic intensity. The reception of the film has been largely positive. Critics have praised Statham's nuanced performance, the film's contemporary relevance in addressing digital crime, and its well-choreographed action sequences. Audience engagement has been strong, particularly with viewers who appreciate a balance of suspense, moral complexity, and high-stakes action. The financial success of the film, grossing over $160 million worldwide, reflects both effective marketing and the appeal of Statham as a leading action star. The film's positive reception has sparked discussions of potential sequels, with opportunities to explore further missions by Adam Clay, additional threats to societal order, and deeper engagement with the Beekeeper's organization and its operational philosophy. Beyond the central narrative, the Beekeeper introduces several subplots that enrich both character development and thematic complexity. One notable subplot involves Adam's interaction with Wallace Westwild, portrayed by Jeremy Irons, a former CIA operative whose knowledge of covert operations and digital intelligence becomes crucial to Adam's quest. Wallace's character is portrayed as a mentor and moral compass, embodying both wisdom and pragmatism. He provides Adam with insight into the broader network of corruption that powers Derek Danforth's schemes, explaining the technological sophistication behind the phishing scams, the manipulation of data, and the exploitation of political systems. Wallace's presence underscores a recurring theme in the film, the intersection of knowledge, ethics, and power. His guidance allows Adam to navigate not just physical threats but the intricate web of digital and institutional corruption that drives the antagonist's operations. Minor characters also serve as vital narrative anchors, providing both context and emotional texture. Eloise Parker's role, while limited in screen time due to her early demise, resonates throughout the film, influencing Adam's decisions and moral framework. Her kindness, mentorship, and tragic death establish the emotional stakes and the ethical foundation of Adam's journey. Similarly, Verona Parker's development from a skeptical, by-the-book FBI agent to a nuanced figure capable of recognizing moral complexity highlights the tension between institutional responsibility and personal justice. The interactions between Adam and Verona are layered with subtle cues, hesitation, judgment, respect, and eventual understanding, reflecting the film's attention to character psychology and moral ambiguity. Cinematographically, the film employs techniques that heighten suspense, underscore thematic contrasts, and visually articulate character states. Gabriel Beristain cinematography often contrasts the warm, natural light of Adam's rural environment with the stark, artificial illumination of corporate and urban settings, visually reinforcing the tension between natural order and human corruption. Close-ups of Adam handling bees, meticulously tending hives, or observing subtle cues in his environment emphasize his attentiveness, discipline, and strategic thinking. Conversely, wide shots of the Danforth estate, filled with opulence and surveillance technology, communicate power, isolation, and the challenges of confronting entrenched authority. These visual strategies enhance both narrative clarity and audience immersion, allowing viewers to intuitively grasp stakes, tensions, and character motivations. Suspense in The Beekeeper is carefully orchestrated. The film uses pacing, sound design, and framing to sustain tension, particularly during sequences involving infiltration, surveillance, and confrontation. Slow, deliberate movements intercut with sudden bursts of action create a rhythm that mirrors Adam's tactical approach, measured observation punctuated by decisive intervention. Sound design, including the buzzing of bees, ambient environmental noise, and subtle musical cues, heightens both tension and thematic resonance, linking Adam's natural, ordered world with the chaotic, morally compromised human world he navigates. Editing choices further contribute to suspense, with tight cuts during fight sequences emphasizing immediacy and consequence, while longer takes during investigative sequences allow for narrative exposition and character insight without sacrificing engagement. Psychologically, the film offers a detailed exploration of Adam's character. Grief, guilt, and a sense of moral obligation drive his transformation, but these emotions are channeled into methodical, intelligent action. Adam's internal monologues, expressed through subtle facial expressions and situational decisions, provide insight into his moral reasoning, ethical prioritization, and emotional depth. His actions are not driven by blind rage but by a structured, principled approach to justice. Similarly, Derek Danforth's psychology is explored with care. He is depicted as both charismatic and sociopathic, capable of manipulating systems and people with ease. His interactions with Adam and other characters reveal a complex blend of entitlement, strategic thinking, and moral disengagement, serving as a narrative foil to Adam's disciplined, ethically anchored approach. The film's thematic exploration extends beyond personal vengeance. By incorporating elements of digital fraud, political manipulation, and institutional failure, The Beekeeper positions itself as a contemporary meditation on the vulnerabilities of modern society. The narrative emphasizes that threats are no longer confined to physical spaces, they permeate digital infrastructure, corporate networks, and governmental institutions. The Beekeepers, as a clandestine organization, function as a narrative mechanism to explore alternative structures of justice and ethical intervention, highlighting both the potential and limits of individual and collective action in addressing systemic wrongs. The metaphor of the hive operates on multiple levels, as a model of cooperation and vigilance, as a reflection of Adam's internal discipline, and as a thematic foil to the chaos and exploitation embodied by Derek's network. Production anecdotes enrich the narrative, illustrating the film's dedication to authenticity. Jason Statham's hands-on training in beekeeping not only ensured credible physical performance but also informed subtle aspects of his character's demeanor and tactical approach. Real bees were used in several scenes, requiring careful coordination, safety protocols, and patient filming techniques. Director David Ayer emphasized blending realism with stylized action, ensuring that fight choreography, suspense sequences, and visual storytelling all served narrative purpose rather than spectacle alone. Set design, costuming, and location choices were similarly informed by thematic intent. The rural environments reinforce calm, order, and natural morality, while corporate and political spaces visually communicate power, manipulation, and moral complexity. Marketing strategies reflected the film's dual appeal to action audiences and viewers interested in topical themes. Trailers emphasized both kinetic sequences and narrative intrigue, highlighting Statham's performance while hinting at the sophisticated, high-stakes conspiracy driving the plot. Promotional materials utilized visual motifs from the film, bees, hives, and the interplay between light and shadow, to communicate both thematic resonance and aesthetic identity. The film's release strategy, combining theatrical, streaming, and home media platforms, maximized audience reach and capitalized on Statham's established fanbase while appealing to viewers interested in contemporary action thriller narratives grounded in real-world concerns. Audience reception highlighted appreciation for the film's combination of action, moral complexity, and character depth. Critics praised Statham's ability to convey intelligence, emotional depth, and physical prowess simultaneously, elevating the film above standard action fare. Audience engagement metrics indicated strong retention during suspense sequences, with viewers responding particularly to the interplay between Adam's methodical approach and the unpredictable, morally ambiguous actions of Derek Danforth and his network. The film's financial success further validated its appeal, demonstrating that carefully crafted narratives combining action, suspense, and thematic depth can achieve both critical and commercial recognition. The broader implications of The Beekeeper extend into discussions of morality, societal structures, and personal responsibility. By juxtaposing Adam's disciplined, principled actions with Derek's manipulative, exploitative behavior, the film interrogates questions of power, justice, and ethical boundaries. The narrative suggests that formal systems of law and governance may be insufficient to address complex, modern threats, and it explores the potential of principled individuals or collectives to intervene effectively while navigating ethical challenges. The recurring hive metaphor, the careful delineation of moral and immoral behavior, and the exploration of personal grief as a motivator for justice collectively establish a rich tapestry of thematic concerns that invite reflection and discussion beyond the immediate spectacle of action sequences. The narrative reaches its crescendo as Adam Clay penetrates the Danforth estate, an architectural and symbolic representation of power, control, and moral corruption. The filmmakers meticulously designed this sequence to balance visual spectacle with narrative intensity. The estate's sprawling layout, reinforced by high walls, surveillance cameras, and armed mercenaries, conveys the extreme measures Derek Danforth has taken to protect his interests. Adam's approach is deliberate. He studies patrol patterns, uses shadows to remain unseen, and moves with calculated precision. Every step is designed to communicate his intelligence and resourcefulness, reinforcing the film's depiction of him as a tactician, not merely an action hero. The cinematography alternates between sweeping wide shots that establish spatial awareness and tight close-ups that highlight minute details, from a mercenary's subtle gesture to the glint of a security camera lens catching the light. These visual strategies create tension and immerse the audience in Adam's perspective, allowing viewers to anticipate danger and appreciate the complexity of his mission. As Adam navigates the estate, several action sequences unfold, each with distinct choreography and narrative function. Hand-to-hand confrontations emphasize Adam's physical prowess while showcasing the meticulous training that underpins his every movement. These sequences are shot with a focus on clarity, avoiding excessive cuts so the audience can fully appreciate his strategic responses to multiple attackers. Gunfights and tactical maneuvers are interspersed with moments of stillness, where Adam assesses the environment, reinforcing the theme of patience, discipline, and foresight. One notable scene involves Adam incapacitating a group of mercenaries without lethal force, reflecting both his ethical restraint and situational intelligence. This careful balancing of action and moral logic distinguishes the film, allowing it to transcend the typical action thriller formula. Minor characters contribute significantly to the tension and thematic depth of the climax. Staff members, corporate insiders, and security personnel are portrayed not merely as obstacles but as reflections of the pervasive influence Derek wields. Each character, even in brief interactions, provides insight into the power dynamics and moral compromises at play within the Danforth organization. The careful delineation of these roles enhances the narrative's complexity, showing how corruption operates through networks of complicity and reinforcing the stakes Adam faces. Additionally, the inclusion of subtle human moments among these minor characters, hesitation, doubt, or fear, adds realism and texture, preventing the sequences from feeling mechanical or overly formulaic. The confrontation between Adam and Derek Danforth is both the physical and psychological climax. Derek, confident in his ability to manipulate systems and evade accountability, underestimates Adam's capabilities and resolve. Their exchanges are laced with ideological tension. Derek represents unbridled ambition, exploitation, and moral detachment, while Adam embodies disciplined justice, ethical responsibility, and personal integrity. The duel between them is choreographed to reflect this contrast. Adam uses both strategy and skill, exploiting Derek's overconfidence and reliance on external advantages. The physicality of the fight is matched by dialogue that elucidates character motivations, allowing the audience to understand the stakes beyond immediate survival. Derek's ultimate defeat is not only a triumph of skill but a narrative vindication of ethical action confronting systemic corruption. Verona Parker's role during the climax reinforces the film's moral complexity. As an FBI agent bound by law and protocol, she cannot fully sanction Adam's extrajudicial methods. Yet her observations and interactions reveal growing recognition of the ethical rationale behind his actions. The narrative uses their interplay to explore themes of justice versus legality, highlighting the limitations of institutional frameworks in addressing modern, technologically sophisticated threats. Verona's nuanced response, hesitation, acknowledgement, and eventual tacit approval, underscores the film's engagement with moral ambiguity and the balance between personal responsibility and institutional constraints. Symbolically, the film's climax employs recurring motifs of bees and hives to underscore thematic resonance. Adam's tactical maneuvers mirror the strategic organization of a hive. Each action is purposeful, coordinated, and directed toward collective well-being, in contrast to Derek's chaotic, self-serving operations. Visual cues reinforce this metaphor, from the aerial shots of hive-like estate structures to the deliberate patterns in Adam's infiltration and combat strategy. These symbolic elements enrich the narrative, transforming action sequences into meditative commentary on order, morality, and social cohesion. In the resolution, Adam retrieves the scuba diving suit hidden on the estate's coastal perimeter and disappears into the sea. This image serves multiple narrative and thematic functions. It provides closure to the immediate conflict while signaling ongoing vigilance, adaptability, and potential future missions. The sea, vast and enigmatic, becomes a metaphor for the unknown challenges that Adam will continue to confront, emphasizing both the continuity of his role as a moral agent and the perpetual nature of systemic threats. The ending reinforces the thematic core: justice requires sustained vigilance, strategic intelligence, and the courage to act when formal institutions may be insufficient. Critical reception of The Beekeeper highlighted its successful fusion of high-octane action, contemporary relevance, and moral complexity. Reviews praised Jason Statham's layered performance, emphasizing his ability to convey intelligence, ethical reflection, and physical prowess simultaneously. Critics noted the film's topical engagement with digital crime and systemic corruption, recognizing its narrative sophistication beyond conventional action thriller entertainment. Audience reactions similarly reflected appreciation for the balance of suspense, emotional depth, and action, particularly noting the thoughtful depiction of moral ambiguity and the effectiveness of the hive metaphor as a structural and thematic device. The film's commercial success, grossing over $160 million worldwide against a $40 million budget, reinforced its appeal and validated the filmmaker's approach to combining action, suspense, and ethical inquiry. Box office performance demonstrated audience interest in narratives that integrate contemporary concerns, such as digital fraud, political corruption, and institutional failure, with traditional action thriller conventions. The film's financial results, coupled with strong audience engagement metrics, positioned it as a viable foundation for a potential franchise, capable of exploring ongoing missions, new threats, and further development of the Beekeeper's organizational philosophy. The potential for sequels or extended narratives is significant. Future installments could delve into global conspiracies, the evolution of Adam Clay as a character, and the moral and ethical challenges inherent in operating outside traditional systems of justice. Subplots involving secondary characters, emerging threats, or expanded exploration of the Beekeeper's operational methods could provide narrative richness while maintaining thematic consistency. The established motifs of bees, hives, and strategic organization provide both visual and conceptual continuity, allowing subsequent films to explore complex social, political, and technological landscapes. Cinematographically, the film's style supports both narrative engagement and thematic exploration. Use of lighting, framing, and camera movement differentiates between the natural, orderly world Adam inhabits and the chaotic, morally compromised environments he confronts. Tight shots during investigation and infiltration sequences convey intensity, focus, and tactical precision, while expansive wide shots of urban, corporate, or coastal settings emphasize power, isolation, and vulnerability. The sound design, including the recurring auditory motif of buzzing bees, ambient environmental effects, and strategically placed musical cues, reinforces tension and symbolic resonance. Editing choices, balancing rapid cuts during action sequences with sustained takes during investigative or reflective moments, maintain pacing while allowing for audience immersion and comprehension of character strategy and ethical deliberation. Thematically, The Beekeeper engages with questions of moral responsibility, the limitations of formal justice systems, and the potential for principled intervention in addressing complex societal threats. Adam Clay embodies a model of disciplined, ethical action, juxtaposed against Derek Danforth's exploitative and morally disengaged behavior. The film suggests that contemporary threats, digital, institutional, and political, require vigilance, intelligence, and ethical discernment, emphasizing both individual agency and the potential of coordinated action. The recurring bee metaphor reinforces the narrative's emphasis on strategy, cooperation, and protection of collective well-being, aligning Adam's personal mission with broader societal imperatives. Following the climactic confrontation and Derek Danforth's demise, the narrative shifts to the immediate aftermath, allowing viewers to process both the physical and moral consequences of Adam Clay's actions. The film devotes several carefully structured sequences to these moments, illustrating the layered complexity of the story. Adam, having neutralized the central threat, is shown surveying the estate from a distance, contemplating the cost of his mission and the continued uncertainty of justice in a flawed world. These sequences are deliberately paced, with minimal dialogue and contemplative cinematography, emphasizing the weight of responsibility and the lingering presence of unresolved systemic threats. The audience is invited to reflect on the juxtaposition between Adam's personal code and the broader societal structures that fail to prevent corruption. The narrative further explores the psychological consequences for minor characters affected by Adam's actions. Verona Parker, initially bound by institutional protocols and investigative procedures, is left to reconcile her recognition of moral complexity with her professional obligations. Her reflective moments, captured in close-ups emphasizing subtle facial expressions and body language, reveal an internal negotiation between law, ethics, and understanding of Adam's mission. This attention to character psychology underscores the film's commitment to exploring moral ambiguity beyond the central hero, enriching the narrative texture and providing depth to secondary perspectives. The Beekeeper's organization, while largely operating in the background, receives subtle narrative development in these final sequences. The audience glimpses the operational sophistication, ethical codes, and collective discipline of the group through Adam's interactions and internal reflections. These depictions reinforce the film's central metaphor, the hive as a model of strategic organization, vigilance, and moral responsibility. The cinematic portrayal, careful composition, muted lighting, and symbolic framing, strengthens thematic resonance, linking Adam's personal actions to broader societal implications. The symbolic use of bees reaches its narrative apex in the resolution. The buzzing of the hives, first introduced in the opening scenes as a background element of Adam's pastoral routine, reappears in juxtaposition with the coastal escape sequence. This auditory motif links the natural order of the bee colony with Adam's strategic approach, suggesting continuity between individual morality and collective responsibility. Cinematographically, the transition from the estate's artificial lighting to the natural hues of the coastal environment, accompanied by the persistent hum of bees, visually and sonically reinforces this connection. The symbolism is subtle yet potent, conveying themes of order, vigilance, and ethical action without overt exposition. Marketing and promotional strategies for The Beekeeper were carefully aligned with the film's thematic and narrative priorities. Trailers emphasized Jason Statham's dual strengths, physical action and psychological depth, while highlighting suspenseful sequences, the digital crime element, and the overarching conspiracy narrative. Posters and promotional visuals incorporated recurring motifs of bees, hives, and stylized contrasts between natural and urban environments, signaling both aesthetic identity and thematic resonance. Social media campaigns leveraged Statham's established fanbase while targeting audiences interested in contemporary thrillers grounded in real-world ethical dilemmas. This marketing approach contributed significantly to the film's strong opening performance and sustained audience engagement. The film's release strategy was designed to maximize both theatrical and digital reach. Theatrical release on January 12, 2024, in the United States and United Kingdom capitalized on Statham's star power and the winter release window for action thrillers. Subsequent streaming availability on Sky Cinema and VOD platforms, along with home media releases in Blu-ray, Ultra HD, and DVD formats, ensured accessibility for diverse audiences. The staggered approach allowed for sustained discourse on the film's narrative and thematic elements, fostering both critical analysis and popular discussion. Critical reception highlighted several strengths of the film. Reviewers praised the nuanced characterization of Adam Clay, the moral complexity of the narrative, and the contemporary relevance of its digital crime and systemic corruption themes. Action sequences were lauded for clarity, choreography, and integration with narrative purpose, rather than serving merely as spectacle. The interplay between Adam and secondary characters, particularly Verona Parker and Wallace Westwild, was recognized as a key contributor to emotional and ethical depth. Audience ratings reflected strong approval, with particular emphasis on the seamless integration of suspense, action, and psychological nuance. Box office performance reinforced the film's impact, grossing over $160 million worldwide against a production budget of approximately $40 million. Financial success was complemented by positive audience engagement metrics, including repeat viewership and strong social media discourse. This combination of critical and commercial achievement positioned The Beekeeper as a significant entry in the contemporary action thriller genre, demonstrating the viability of narratives that balance physical spectacle with ethical inquiry and character-driven storytelling. Culturally, the film prompted discussions around the ethical challenges of digital security, personal responsibility, and systemic corruption. By depicting the consequences of sophisticated phishing scams, political manipulation, and institutional failure, the narrative encouraged viewers to reflect on the vulnerabilities of modern society and the moral imperatives of individual action. The Beekeepers, as a narrative device, inspired dialogue around collective vigilance, strategic cooperation, and ethical intervention, resonating with audiences interested in both philosophical and practical considerations of justice. The narrative concludes with Adam's disappearance into the sea, a symbolic gesture of ongoing vigilance, moral duty, and adaptability. This final image encapsulates the film's central themes: the persistence of systemic threats, the necessity of disciplined, ethical action, and the potential for principled individuals to influence outcomes in complex environments. The visual metaphor of Adam entering the water, framed against a vast horizon, reinforces notions of continuity, challenge, and resilience, leaving audiences with a sense of closure yet anticipation for future developments. Franchise potential is considerable. The narrative structure, thematic depth, and character design allow for sequels exploring global conspiracies, expanded missions of the Beekeepers, and deeper examinations of Adam Clay's psychological and ethical evolution. Subplots involving minor characters, technological threats, or political intrigue could provide narrative richness while maintaining continuity. Visual and symbolic motifs, particularly the hive metaphor, create a cohesive framework for subsequent storytelling, ensuring both aesthetic and thematic consistency across potential franchise installments. In summary, The Beekeeper, 2024, emerges as a contemporary action thriller that combines narrative sophistication, thematic depth, and kinetic excitement. The film's meticulous attention to character psychology, ethical dilemmas, and cinematic technique distinguishes it from conventional entries in the genre. Jason Statham delivers a layered, compelling performance, while supporting characters, cinematography, and sound design contribute to a fully realized narrative experience. By integrating contemporary concerns, digital fraud, political corruption, and systemic vulnerability, with classic elements of suspense, strategy, and personal justice, the film achieves both entertainment and reflective significance. From the serene landscapes of Adam's apiary to the high-stakes confrontations at the Danforth estate, The Beekeeper weaves a cohesive, immersive narrative that resonates emotionally, intellectually, and viscerally, solidifying its place as a modern action thriller of substantial impact. In addition to the primary conflict, The Beekeeper invests considerable attention in developing minor characters, whose arcs enhance the narrative complexity and thematic richness. Wallace Westwild, the retired CIA operative played by Jeremy Irons, is more than a mentor. He embodies the intersection of experience, moral reasoning, and strategic knowledge. Wallace's subtle guidance informs Adam's decisions, highlighting the importance of wisdom, patience, and ethical judgment in high-stakes situations. His role illuminates the broader philosophical underpinnings of the narrative. Justice is not simply reactive but requires foresight, prudence, and a keen understanding of systemic dynamics. Wallace's dialogues are carefully written to contrast with Adam's action-oriented approach, serving as narrative moments of reflection and ethical calibration. Another minor character, the call center operator turned reluctant informant, functions as a lens into the everyday mechanisms of corruption. Though their screen time is limited, their internal conflict, loyalty to employers versus recognition of wrongdoing, adds narrative texture and underscores the broader societal critique embedded in the film. These sequences emphasize that the criminal network is not monolithic, it depends on human complicity, fear, and moral compromise. By including these minor arcs, the filmmakers humanize the broader systemic threats, making the antagonist network feel believable and grounded in real-world sociological dynamics. The film's subplots extend these character explorations into larger thematic territory. Verona Parker's investigation, initially constrained by bureaucratic protocol, gradually intersects with Adam's personal mission. Her subplot allows the audience to consider law enforcement's role in modern, technologically sophisticated crimes, and the tension between procedural adherence and ethical flexibility. Scenes depicting her research, interrogations, and internal debates provide narrative pauses that deepen suspense and allow the audience to consider multiple perspectives on justice. The intersection of Adam's vigilante action with Verona's procedural approach reinforces one of the film's central thematic tensions: the limitations of institutional authority versus the moral agency of individuals. Adam's psychological journey is examined with exceptional detail throughout these sequences. His grief over Eloise's death, initially a private and personal experience, evolves into a disciplined, methodical response to systemic injustice. The film presents this transformation through visual cues, subtle dialogue, and pacing. Adam's early movements are slow, meditative, and reflective, mirroring his internal processing of grief. As the narrative progresses, his actions become increasingly deliberate, tactical, and ethically guided. This psychological evolution is intertwined with the hive metaphor, reinforcing his strategic mindset and underscoring the connection between personal discipline and moral action. By situating Adam's psychological development within the broader narrative, the film emphasizes the interplay between emotion, intellect, and ethical decision-making in confronting complex threats. Subplots also highlight the ripple effects of corruption. Scenes depicting the financial exploitation of Eloise, the destabilization of her charitable work, and the impact on surrounding communities underscore the broader societal consequences of individual and institutional malfeasance. These sequences ground the story in realism and increase the stakes, transforming Adam's mission from personal vengeance into a moral imperative with wider social relevance. The film's careful weaving of these subplots ensures that each narrative thread reinforces both the emotional impact and the thematic resonance of the story. The integration of real-world analogs enhances narrative depth. By portraying sophisticated phishing scams, corporate collusion, and political manipulation, the film mirrors contemporary concerns about cybersecurity, ethical governance, and institutional accountability. These elements invite the audience to reflect on the vulnerabilities present in modern society and the ethical responsibilities of individuals in positions of knowledge or skill. Adam Clay's interventions are framed as morally necessary responses to systemic inadequacies, offering a narrative exploration of how personal integrity and disciplined action can counteract institutional failure. Cinematography in The Beekeeper plays a central role in conveying both narrative tension and thematic resonance. Gabriel Berisstein's visual approach carefully differentiates between the natural, ordered world of Adam Clay's rural life and the chaotic, morally compromised environments he must infiltrate. The film frequently employs warm, natural lighting when depicting Adam's apiary and countryside surroundings, emphasizing tranquility, harmony, and ethical grounding. These sequences are often framed with mid-to-wide shots that highlight the expansive, balanced environment and Adam's small but intentional presence within it. The bees themselves are frequently captured in slow motion or with macro close-ups, their movements echoing Adam's own methodical, strategic mindset. This visual mirroring reinforces the central metaphor of the hive as a model of discipline, cooperation, and ethical organization. In stark contrast, the sequences involving Derek Danforth, the corporate network, and the estate's interior employ cooler, artificial lighting and sharper contrasts. Sterile white and blue tones dominate these settings, conveying a sense of detachment, surveillance, and moral sterility. Wide-angle shots emphasize architectural dominance, walls, and barriers, reflecting both literal and symbolic obstacles that Adam must overcome. The cinematography in these sequences uses geometric compositions, strong vertical and horizontal lines, and high vantage points to suggest control, power, and intimidation, juxtaposed against Adam's nimble, adaptable approach. Tight framing during infiltration scenes heightens claustrophobia and suspense, immersing the viewer in Adam's perspective while emphasizing the stakes of his decisions. Visual symbolism extends beyond lighting and framing to include recurring motifs. Bees, hives, and hexagonal patterns appear subtly in both production design and camera composition, serving as metaphoric cues for discipline, collective action, and ethical vigilance. The coastal and rural landscapes are contrasted with artificial interiors, reinforcing thematic tensions between natural order and human corruption. Water, particularly in the film's concluding scuba sequence, serves as a symbol of adaptability, renewal, and the unknown, aligning with Adam's continuous vigilance and moral mission. Even minor props, such as honey jars or surveillance monitors, are visually framed to reflect dual meanings, literal functionality and thematic resonance. These layers of visual storytelling enrich the narrative, providing audiences with symbolic depth that complements the plot and character arcs. Music and sound design are integral to the film's suspense and thematic communication. Composers David Sardi and Jared Michael Fry employ a dynamic score that adapts to narrative pacing, combining ambient tension-building motifs with percussive bursts during action sequences. The buzzing of bees is not merely diegetic sound, it is strategically integrated as an auditory motif, recurring during moments of contemplation, observation, and tactical decision-making. This motif reinforces the hive metaphor, linking Adam's mental state, strategy, and ethical approach to the natural world. Sound effects in fight scenes, infiltration sequences, and high-tension moments are layered to balance realism with cinematic intensity, ensuring that action remains coherent and emotionally resonant rather than chaotic or overwhelming. Suspense sequences are meticulously constructed through the interplay of cinematography, editing, sound, and pacing. Early infiltration scenes utilize slow tracking shots and strategic camera angles to convey Adam's observation and tactical planning. Editing choices alternate between sustained takes for clarity and rapid cuts during emergent confrontations, mirroring the ebb and flow of tension in both Adam's mind and the external environment. Sound cues, subtle floor creaks, distant voices, the hum of surveillance equipment, build an immersive, anticipatory atmosphere. Audience engagement is heightened through this careful orchestration, as the viewer is aligned with Adam's perception, predicting threats while experiencing his calculated emotional control and strategic acumen. The integration of these cinematic elements with character psychology is particularly effective. Adam's methodical approach to problem-solving, rooted in grief, moral responsibility, and discipline, is reinforced through visual and auditory storytelling. Close-up shots capture micro-expressions that reveal ethical deliberation, emotional restraint, or subtle tactical decision-making. Lighting and sound respond to these states, aligning the audience's sensory perception with Adam's internal landscape. Similarly, Derek Danforth's psychological traits, overconfidence, detachment, and manipulative tendencies, are mirrored in stark, sterile visuals, echoing the cold moral environment he inhabits. The juxtaposition of these cinematic strategies reinforces the central narrative and ethical themes, making suspense, action, and psychological depth inseparable. Subplots and minor sequences are enhanced through similar cinematic craftsmanship. Verona Parker's investigative moments are depicted with cooler tones, tight framing, and deliberate pacing, communicating both procedural scrutiny and her internal ethical tension. Wallace Westwild's advisory sequences utilize softer, warmer lighting and wider framing, emphasizing reflective dialogue, mentorship, and strategic deliberation. Even brief interactions, such as Adam observing informants or scanning the call center, are staged with careful attention to visual hierarchy, depth of field, and auditory cues, reinforcing both narrative clarity and thematic resonance. The seamless integration of these sequences maintains narrative momentum while expanding thematic and psychological layers. In essence, the combination of cinematography, visual symbolism, music, sound design, and editing transforms The Beekeeper from a conventional action thriller into a nuanced, immersive experience. The audience is not only engaged by the physical action but is also guided through ethical, psychological, and thematic landscapes. Suspense is sustained not merely by plot mechanics but through an intricate orchestration of sensory, symbolic, and narrative elements that align with character development and thematic exploration. By merging these cinematic tools with carefully crafted narrative and psychological depth, the film achieves a rare balance of entertainment, moral inquiry, and intellectual engagement. The action sequences in The Beekeeper are crafted not merely as spectacle but as a narrative and thematic extension of character and ethical dynamics. The film's central combat scenes are meticulously choreographed to reflect Adam Clay's disciplined approach, strategic intelligence, and moral code, in contrast to Derek Danforth's reckless, self-serving reliance on brute force and manipulation. The first major confrontation occurs at the call center, where Adam intercepts the operational hub of the phishing network. This sequence begins with careful reconnaissance. Adam observes guard rotations, monitors camera angles, and notes escape routes. The camera aligns with his perspective, using long tracking shots to create tension while emphasizing his observational acumen. When the engagement begins, Adam's movements are precise and efficient. He disables a guard silently, repositions, and uses environmental elements to neutralize threats without unnecessary harm. Each move reflects his disciplined psychology and ethical framework, showing the audience that violence is calculated, purposeful, and morally justified, rather than gratuitous. Choreography in these scenes highlights Adam's mastery of close-quarters combat and tactical improvisation. He leverages small objects as tools, uses leverage and momentum, and anticipates adversaries' movements, creating a fluid, realistic combat style. In contrast, Derek's mercenaries employ chaotic aggression, relying on numbers and firepower rather than strategic thinking. This juxtaposition reinforces the film's thematic emphasis on order versus chaos, discipline versus recklessness, and principled action versus self-interest. Sound design amplifies the tension, subtle footsteps, the whirring of electronics, and the background buzz of computers and bees are interspersed with the muted thuds of impact, maintaining suspense while grounding the fight in realism. The infiltration of the Danforth estate represents the film's narrative and action centerpiece. Adam's approach is stealth-first. He navigates the perimeter using shadows, camouflage, and knowledge of environmental acoustics. The suspense builds incrementally, with each careful step observed through tight framing, enhancing audience immersion and emphasizing strategic foresight. The estate's internal layout, characterized by glass walls, security cameras, and high vantage points, turns the environment into both obstacle and narrative device, creating visual metaphors for transparency, surveillance, and power. The ensuing combat sequences within the mansion combine hand-to-hand engagements, tactical improvisation, and environmental awareness. Adam disables mercenaries using a blend of martial skill and strategic use of objects, chandeliers, furniture, and architectural features, demonstrating his integration of physical ability, intelligence, and ethical restraint. The climactic duel between Adam and Derek is layered with thematic and psychological significance. Derek's overconfidence is visually reinforced through framing, lighting, and camera movement. Wide shots show his reliance on spatial advantage and technological oversight, while tight, dynamic angles during combat reflect Adam's superior adaptability and focus. Dialogue punctuates the confrontation, with Derek articulating a worldview rooted in entitlement, manipulation, and moral disengagement, while Adam embodies disciplined ethics, responsibility, and moral clarity. The choreography of the duel mirrors these contrasting philosophies. Derek's attacks are impulsive and heavy-handed, whereas Adam's movements are anticipatory, precise, and efficient. Each strike, block, and reposition is calculated, reinforcing the narrative that intelligence and moral grounding can overcome brute force and systemic corruption. Subplots intersect with these action sequences, further deepening psychological stakes. Verona Parker's positioning outside the estate, observing Adam's infiltration, provides tension between procedural duty and ethical recognition. Her intermittent intervention, hesitations, and responses highlight the moral complexities of law enforcement engagement with extrajudicial action. Wallace Westwild's earlier guidance manifests as tactical strategies in Adam's maneuvers, demonstrating how mentorship, intelligence, and experience inform ethical combat. The audience perceives not only the physical stakes but the moral and psychological implications of each confrontation, reinforcing the film's commitment to character-driven action. The thematic significance of these combat sequences is multi-layered. The battles are metaphors for the confrontation between moral integrity and systemic corruption, disciplined intelligence versus reckless exploitation, and personal responsibility versus institutional failure. Adam's methodical victories underscore the power of ethical agency, strategic foresight, and resilience. Derek's defeats illustrate the consequences of moral disengagement, arrogance, and over-reliance on external power structures. The visual and auditory composition of these sequences reinforces these themes, with lighting, sound cues, camera movement, and environmental framing all contributing to symbolic resonance. Even minor sequences, such as Adam intercepting an informant or navigating a heavily monitored corridor, are crafted with attention to psychological tension, ethical deliberation, and suspense mechanics. The choreography emphasizes anticipation, patience, and moral choice. Adam's restraint contrasts with the mercenaries' aggression, reinforcing the film's philosophical message that discipline, ethical awareness, and calculated intelligence are superior to chaos, exploitation, and brute force. Audience engagement is maintained not only through spectacle but through alignment with Adam's perspective, encouraging cognitive investment in both strategic outcomes and moral consequences. In sum, the Beekeeper's action sequences function as narrative, psychological, and thematic vehicles. Choreography, tactical strategy, environmental awareness, and ethical grounding intertwine, making the suspense and combat meaningful extensions of character development and narrative philosophy. The film's careful orchestration of these sequences demonstrates a deliberate synthesis of entertainment, moral inquiry, and intellectual engagement, elevating the action thriller genre into a nuanced exploration of contemporary ethical and psychological dilemmas. Adam Clay's character is the psychological and ethical core of the Beekeeper. His motivations are rooted in a combination of grief, loyalty, and moral responsibility. The trauma of Eloise Parker's death serves as both catalyst and framework for his transformation. In the opening act, Adam is portrayed as disciplined and patient, immersed in the natural rhythms of his apiary. His grief is private, expressed through subtle gestures, lingering glances at the hives, meticulous care for bees, and moments of reflective silence. This establishes his inner world as structured, ethical, and introspective. As the narrative progresses, the external chaos of criminal networks and political corruption intrudes upon his ordered life, forcing him to reconcile personal loss with ethical action. The psychological tension is central. Adam must navigate rage, grief, and moral obligation while adhering to a personal code of justice that is both rigorous and humane. Derek Danforth serves as Adam's foil, psychologically and morally. His character is defined by entitlement, manipulation, and moral disengagement. Unlike Adam, Derek operates through deception, exploiting systems and human vulnerabilities for personal gain. His overconfidence and reliance on external power reflect a psychological rigidity, which ultimately becomes his downfall. The narrative explores Derek's internal reasoning, providing context for his actions without excusing them. His ethical blindness is contrasted sharply against Adam's deliberative moral framework, reinforcing the film's exploration of integrity versus corruption, disciplined intelligence versus reckless exploitation, and the consequences of moral disengagement. Verona Parker's psychological arc is particularly nuanced. Initially bound by institutional procedures and a rigid conception of law and justice, she is forced to grapple with ethical ambiguity. Her observations of Adam's calculated interventions create cognitive dissonance. The law dictates restraint, yet the ethical imperative demands recognition of systemic failure and the necessity of moral action. Her internal conflict is explored through visual and narrative cues, lingering shots of her deliberation, moments of hesitation during critical junctures, and reflective dialogue that signals her growing awareness of moral nuance. Verona's journey illustrates the psychological complexity of individuals operating within bureaucratic systems, emphasizing the tension between duty and conscience. Supporting characters further enrich the psychological and ethical landscape. Wallace Westwild, as mentor and strategist, embodies reflective wisdom and ethical guidance. Minor figures within the criminal network, call center employees, mercenaries, and corporate insiders, provide microcosmic explorations of moral compromise, fear, and complicity. Each minor arc contributes to a broader examination of human behavior under ethical and systemic pressures, reinforcing the film's narrative depth. The film foregrounds moral dilemmas at multiple levels. Adam must continuously make decisions balancing efficacy, ethical restraint, and personal risk. Each tactical choice, how to incapacitate a guard, whether to employ lethal force, and when to act stealthily versus aggressively, serves as an ethical test, illustrating the complexity of personal justice in morally ambiguous contexts. Similarly, Verona faces dilemmas regarding institutional protocol versus ethical recognition, highlighting the limitations of law when confronting sophisticated criminal operations. These layered moral conflicts encourage viewers to consider the nuanced interplay between individual agency, systemic constraints, and ethical responsibility. The connection between personal grief and societal consequences is a recurring thematic focus. Adam's grief over Eloise's death is not confined to private emotion, it drives action that addresses broader societal vulnerabilities, such as digital fraud, institutional corruption, and exploitation. The narrative situates personal loss as both a catalyst and a moral imperative, linking emotional investment to principled action. This interplay deepens the audience's understanding of Adam's psychology, situating ethical decision-making within both personal and social contexts. Symbolically, the hive and bees continue to reinforce psychological and thematic motifs. Adam's disciplined, strategic mind mirrors the hive's structured complexity, emphasizing vigilance, cooperation, and ethical responsibility. Derek's chaotic, self-serving actions contrast with this order, visually and narratively reflecting psychological and moral discord. Water and coastal imagery in the conclusion symbolize adaptability, reflection, and ongoing ethical engagement, reinforcing Adam's continuous role as a moral agent navigating complex societal threats. The synthesis of character psychology, ethical dilemmas, and thematic motifs elevates the narrative beyond conventional action storytelling. Adam's journey is not merely physical but moral and psychological. Derek's antagonism is not merely a threat but a study in ethical disengagement. Verona's trajectory illustrates institutional tension and conscience. These interwoven psychological and ethical arcs, supported by visual symbolism, cinematography, and narrative pacing, create a richly layered exploration of justice, responsibility, and human behavior. In essence, The Beekeeper presents a sophisticated meditation on morality, personal loss, systemic corruption, and ethical vigilance. Its characters operate within complex psychological and moral frameworks, with every decision, movement, and interaction reflecting larger thematic concerns. By combining intense, meticulously choreographed action with nuanced ethical and psychological exploration, the film delivers an immersive experience that engages both intellect and emotion, making it a standout contemporary action thriller. The Beekeeper has made a notable cultural impact, resonating with audiences and critics alike due to its unique blend of action, suspense, and moral exploration. Its contemporary relevance, highlighting digital crime, institutional corruption, and personal responsibility, positions it as more than a typical action thriller. Discussions surrounding the film on social media, forums, and review platforms frequently emphasize its ethical complexity, cinematic craftsmanship, and Jason Statham's layered performance. Viewers are drawn not only to the physical spectacle but also to the moral and psychological tension embedded within the narrative, leading to widespread discourse about the ethical implications of extrajudicial intervention in modern society. Critically, the film has been praised for successfully integrating character-driven storytelling with high-stakes action. Statham's portrayal of Adam Clay is cited as a career-defining performance, balancing intense physicality with intelligence, discipline, and emotional depth. Supporting characters such as Verona Parker and Wallace Westwild are acknowledged for adding nuanced perspectives on law, ethics, and mentorship, enriching the narrative. Critics have highlighted the director David Ayer's skillful orchestration of cinematography, editing, and sound design, noting how these elements elevate suspense while reinforcing thematic and psychological motifs. The careful balance between action spectacle and ethical inquiry sets the film apart from conventional genre entries. Marketing for The Beekeeper was multifaceted, leveraging both traditional and digital strategies. Trailers highlighted Jason Statham's combination of martial skill, tactical intelligence, and emotional depth, emphasizing suspenseful sequences and the overarching conspiracy narrative. Visual motifs, bees, hives, and contrasting environments, were consistently integrated across posters, digital campaigns, and social media content, signaling both aesthetic identity and thematic resonance. Promotional materials stressed the film's contemporary relevance, highlighting digital fraud, political corruption, and ethical action as central concerns, engaging audiences seeking both entertainment and narrative sophistication. This marketing strategy contributed to the film's successful opening, strong box office retention, and positive audience engagement metrics. Box office performance reinforced the film's cultural and commercial impact. Grossing over $160 million worldwide against a production budget of approximately $40 million, The Beekeeper demonstrated broad audience appeal and effective market positioning. Financial success was complemented by high engagement across social media, with discussions emphasizing suspense sequences, thematic depth, and Statham's performance. The combination of commercial profitability and critical recognition positions the film as a strong candidate for franchise development. Franchise potential is significant, with narrative, thematic, and character frameworks allowing for sequels or spin-offs. Future installments could explore new global conspiracies, expanded missions for the Beekeeper's organization, and deeper psychological and ethical exploration of Adam Clay. Subplots involving secondary characters, evolving threats, and the strategic operations of the Beekeepers provide narrative richness, while recurring visual and auditory motifs, such as bees, hives, and coastal imagery, ensure aesthetic and thematic continuity. The potential for cross-media expansion, including serialized streaming narratives or interactive experiences, further underscores the franchise viability. Culturally, the film stimulates reflection on contemporary issues. Its depiction of digital fraud, political manipulation, and institutional failure encourages audiences to consider societal vulnerabilities and the ethical responsibilities of individuals in positions of knowledge, skill, or moral influence. The Beekeepers, as a narrative construct, highlight the importance of vigilance, coordination, and ethical engagement, providing a symbolic and practical lens through which to view contemporary challenges. The film's resonance is amplified by its ability to integrate entertainment, suspense, and moral inquiry, creating a multidimensional viewing experience. In synthesizing the film's components, The Beekeeper stands as a cohesive, immersive, and intellectually engaging work. Narrative, character psychology, cinematography, sound design, choreography, thematic symbolism, and ethical exploration are interwoven to create a layered experience that appeals to both emotion and intellect. Adam Clay's journey, framed by grief, discipline, and moral responsibility, provides the narrative spine, while supporting characters, ethical dilemmas, and systemic threats enrich the texture. The meticulous design of action sequences, suspense mechanics, and cinematic elements ensures clarity, coherence, and emotional impact. Ultimately, The Beekeeper exemplifies the evolution of contemporary action thrillers, blending kinetic spectacle with psychological depth and ethical sophistication. Its cultural, critical, and commercial success demonstrates the audience's appetite for narratives that challenge conventional genre boundaries, offering both entertainment and reflection. By combining immersive storytelling, meticulous craftsmanship, and thematic resonance, the film delivers a complete cinematic experience, positioning itself as both a benchmark in modern action cinema and a foundation for potential franchise expansion. The Beekeeper, 2024, is a contemporary action thriller directed by David Ayer, featuring Jason Statham in the lead role as Adam Clay. Produced by Millennium Media and distributed internationally, the film combines high-octane action with intricate narrative layers, exploring themes of justice, ethical responsibility, and the vulnerabilities of modern society. The narrative centers on Adam, a retired intelligence operative turned beekeeper, whose life is upended when his close friend Eloise Parker falls victim to a sophisticated criminal conspiracy led by the corrupt billionaire Derek Danforth. The story weaves together elements of grief, tactical precision, suspense, and moral inquiry, positioning Adam as both a skilled operative and a principled agent of justice. The film opens with Adam immersed in his peaceful apiary life, mourning the loss of Eloise Parker, whose untimely death at the hands of Danforth's criminal network triggers a series of investigative and tactical actions. Adam's grief catalyzes a journey of strategic retaliation, investigative precision, and moral engagement, culminating in his infiltration of Danforth's heavily guarded estate. Along the way, Adam encounters Verona Parker, an FBI agent investigating the same network, and Wallace Westwild, a retired CIA operative who provides mentorship and strategic insight. The plot emphasizes a careful balance between personal vengeance and moral responsibility, highlighting the intricate tactics Adam employs to dismantle Danforth's operations. The narrative integrates digital crime, political corruption, and systemic failures as contemporary challenges, framing Adam's mission as both ethically necessary and strategically sophisticated. The cast includes Jason Statham as Adam Clay, the protagonist whose grief and moral compass drive the narrative. Jeremy Irons portrays Wallace Westwild, a retired CIA operative who provides guidance and strategic insight. Eloise Parker appears in flashbacks as Adam's close friend whose death motivates his mission, while Verona Parker serves as the FBI agent navigating institutional constraints and ethical dilemmas. Derek Danforth, the antagonist, is a corrupt billionaire orchestrating digital fraud, corporate manipulation, and criminal schemes. Supporting characters include mercenaries, corporate insiders, and minor figures whose arcs explore complicity, fear, and moral compromise. Cinematography in The Beekeeper, led by Gabriel Beristain, plays a central role in conveying tension, character psychology, and thematic resonance. Rural and natural environments, such as Adam's apiary, are depicted with warm, natural lighting, emphasizing tranquility, order, and ethical grounding. Bees and hives frequently serve as visual metaphors for discipline, cooperation, and moral vigilance. In contrast, urban, corporate, and estate interiors employ cooler, artificial lighting to emphasize detachment, surveillance, and corruption. Wide-angle shots communicate power dynamics, tight framing conveys suspense, and macro shots of bees mirror Adam's strategic approach. Water imagery, particularly in the concluding scuba sequence, symbolizes adaptability, reflection, and the ongoing nature of moral vigilance. The film's score by David Sardi and Jared Michael Fry integrates ambient tension motifs with percussive bursts for action sequences. The recurring sound of buzzing bees operates as both diegetic and symbolic auditory cues, reinforcing themes of discipline, vigilance, and ethical responsibility. Sound design emphasizes realism without sacrificing suspense. Footsteps, environmental creaks, and subtle mechanical noises heighten tension, while muted impact sounds during combat sequences maintain narrative clarity and audience engagement. The combination of music and sound design enhances both psychological immersion and thematic depth. Action sequences are central to the narrative, functioning as both spectacle and ethical exploration. Adam employs strategic hand-to-hand combat, environmental improvisation, and tactical foresight, contrasting with Derek's chaotic, brute force reliance on numbers and technology. The first major confrontation occurs at the call center, where Adam neutralizes threats using stealth and precise, ethical force. The infiltration of the Danforth estate represents the narrative centerpiece, with suspenseful tracking shots, tight framing, and calculated combat reflecting Adam's disciplined intelligence. The climactic duel with Derek combines choreography, dialogue, and visual symbolism to underscore the thematic contrast between Adam's ethical discipline and Derek's moral disengagement. Minor sequences, including surveillance and informant interactions, maintain suspense while reinforcing psychological and ethical stakes. Adam's character is the psychological and ethical core of the film. His grief over Eloise's death drives his disciplined, morally guided mission, with every tactical decision functioning as an ethical test emphasizing restraint, intelligence, and purpose. Derek serves as his foil, embodying entitlement, manipulation, and moral disengagement. Verona Parker's arc explores institutional versus ethical responsibility, highlighting the tension between procedural duty and moral conscience. Supporting and minor characters, from Wallace Westwild to informants and mercenaries, enrich the narrative with perspectives on mentorship, fear, complicity, and ethical compromise. Subplots emphasize societal consequences of corruption, the limitations of formal institutions, and the ripple effects of personal action in a morally complex world. Symbolically, the film employs recurring motifs such as bees, hives, and water. The hive reflects discipline, cooperation, and ethical vigilance, while water symbolizes adaptability, reflection, and ongoing moral engagement. Contrasts in lighting and visual design reinforce ethical and psychological tensions. Cinematography, sound, and narrative structure work together to integrate suspense, action, and thematic exploration, ensuring that every scene contributes both emotionally and intellectually to the story. The Beekeeper has achieved significant cultural impact, resonating with audiences and critics due to its combination of action, psychological depth, and moral inquiry. Critical acclaim highlights Statham's performance, the nuanced supporting cast, and David Ayer's orchestration of cinematography, editing, and sound. Audiences have praised the film's suspense, thematic complexity, and contemporary relevance, particularly its engagement with digital crime, political manipulation, and institutional failure. The film grossed over $160 million worldwide on a $40 million budget, demonstrating commercial success alongside critical recognition. Marketing strategies emphasized Jason Statham's physicality, tactical intelligence, and the suspenseful narrative, while visual motifs reinforced thematic and aesthetic identity. Social media campaigns highlighted moral stakes and contemporary relevance, contributing to strong audience engagement and box office performance. Franchise potential is significant, with opportunities for sequels exploring global conspiracies, expanded missions for the Beekeeper's organization, and further psychological and ethical development of Adam Clay. Recurring motifs and thematic continuity provide a cohesive foundation for serialized storytelling or cross-media expansion. In conclusion, The Beekeeper stands out as a modern action thriller that seamlessly integrates high-stakes spectacle with ethical inquiry, psychological depth, and thematic sophistication. Adam Clay's disciplined, morally guided action contrasts with Derek Danforth's corruption, reinforcing central themes of integrity, vigilance, and personal responsibility. Cinematography, sound design, visual symbolism, and narrative structure work in concert to create suspense, psychological immersion, and thematic resonance. The narrative's attention to character arcs, subplots, and societal consequences elevates the film beyond conventional genre storytelling. By balancing entertainment, intellectual engagement, and moral reflection, The Beekeeper delivers a layered, immersive cinematic experience, leaving audiences emotionally, intellectually, and viscerally satisfied while establishing a strong foundation for potential franchise expansion. The Beekeeper, 2024, is a contemporary action thriller directed by David Ayer, starring Jason Statham as Adam Clay. Produced by Millennium Media and released internationally, the film merges high-octane action with layered storytelling, exploring themes of justice, ethical responsibility, and the vulnerabilities of modern society. The story follows Adam, a retired intelligence operative who has turned to a quiet life as a beekeeper, whose world is shattered when his close friend Eloise Parker falls victim to a complex criminal conspiracy orchestrated by the corrupt billionaire Derek Danforth. Throughout the narrative, Adam's journey intertwines grief, tactical precision, suspense, and moral reasoning, portraying him as both a skilled operative and a deeply principled individual. The film begins with Adam's peaceful yet melancholic life among the hives, quietly processing the death of Eloise. Her loss serves as the catalyst for his methodical pursuit of justice, compelling him to dismantle the criminal network responsible. Along the way, he crosses paths with Verona Parker, an FBI agent constrained by bureaucracy yet increasingly aware of ethical complexity, and Wallace Westwild, a retired CIA operative who becomes a mentor figure, offering guidance and strategic insight. The narrative carefully balances Adam's personal desire for justice with his ethical responsibility, framing each tactical decision as a deliberate moral and practical choice. Digital fraud, political manipulation, and systemic corruption are depicted not as abstract threats but as tangible challenges requiring intelligence, discipline, and vigilance, reinforcing the film's contemporary relevance. Jason Statham's portrayal of Adam Clay anchors the story, presenting a protagonist whose grief informs both his psychological depth and ethical framework. Jeremy Irons delivers a nuanced performance as Wallace Westwild, the mentor whose wisdom shapes Adam's approach, while Eloise Parker's presence, largely through flashbacks, contextualizes the emotional stakes driving the narrative. Verona Parker's arc illustrates the tension between institutional duty and moral conscience, reflecting the broader societal dilemmas depicted in the film. Derek Danforth, the antagonist, embodies entitlement, manipulation, and moral disengagement, creating a stark psychological and ethical foil to Adam's disciplined, principled approach. Supporting characters, including mercenaries, corporate insiders, and peripheral figures, add texture, illustrating complicity, fear, and ethical compromise within a corrupt system. Cinematography, led by Gabriel Beristain, elevates the narrative by visually reinforcing character psychology and thematic motifs. Rural and natural environments, particularly Adam's apiary, are bathed in warm, natural light, emphasizing calm, order, and ethical grounding. Bees and hives serve as recurring visual metaphors for cooperation, vigilance, and disciplined strategy, while urban and corporate interiors utilize cooler, artificial lighting to convey moral sterility and systemic corruption. Camera work alternates between expansive wide shots that illustrate power dynamics and tight framing that heighten suspense, while macro shots of bees mirror Adam's meticulous, strategic thinking. Water, especially during the concluding scuba sequence, symbolizes adaptability, reflection, and the continuity of ethical engagement, connecting the narrative's thematic core to visual storytelling. The film's soundscape is equally sophisticated, with a score by David Sardi and Jared Michael Fry that combines ambient tension motifs with percussive bursts to punctuate action sequences. The buzzing of bees functions as both diegetic and symbolic auditory motif, reinforcing themes of discipline and vigilance. Realistic sound design, footsteps, creaking floors, and mechanical hums, is layered with muted impact effects during combat to maintain clarity and audience immersion, ensuring that suspense and narrative coherence remain paramount throughout. Action sequences in The Beekeeper serve dual purposes, as thrilling spectacle and as narrative reflections of character and ethics. Adam's combat style blends hand-to-hand mastery, environmental improvisation, and tactical intelligence, contrasting sharply with Derek Danforth's reliance on brute force, numbers, and technology. The call center infiltration demonstrates Adam's ethical precision. Every move is calculated to neutralize threats while minimizing unnecessary harm. The Danforth estate sequence heightens suspense, with meticulous tracking shots, environmental awareness, and tightly choreographed combat underscoring Adam's disciplined intelligence. The climactic confrontation with Derek weaves choreography, dialogue, and visual symbolism into a dramatic exploration of ethical and psychological contrast, while minor sequences maintain tension and emphasize moral stakes. At the heart of the narrative lies character psychology and ethical complexity. Adam's grief over Eloise drives both his disciplined, morally guided approach and his tactical excellence. Derek represents moral disengagement, overconfidence, and systemic exploitation, serving as a psychological foil. Verona Parker embodies institutional tension and ethical reflection, navigating the divide between procedural duty and moral recognition. Supporting and minor characters, from Wallace Westwile to informants and mercenaries, deepen the narrative, portraying complicity, fear, and ethical compromise. Subplots emphasize societal consequences of corruption and the ripple effects of personal action, demonstrating that individual agency, discipline, and moral clarity can counter systemic failure. Symbolism enriches the narrative throughout. The hive and bees illustrate discipline, cooperation, and vigilance, while water symbolizes adaptability, reflection, and ongoing moral engagement. Contrasting lighting reinforces ethical and psychological tension. Cinematography, sound, and narrative pacing integrate suspense, action, and thematic depth, ensuring that every scene contributes both emotionally and intellectually to the overall story. The Beekeeper has resonated culturally, stimulating discourse on ethical action, digital vulnerability, and systemic corruption. Critics praised Statham's layered performance, the nuanced supporting cast, and David Ayer's orchestration of cinematography, editing, and sound. Audiences responded to the film's integration of suspense, thematic complexity, and contemporary relevance, leading to significant box office success, with over $160 million grossed worldwide on a $40 million production budget. Marketing strategies emphasized Statham's combination of physicality and intelligence, the suspenseful narrative, and the film's moral stakes. Visual motifs and social media campaigns reinforced thematic identity, contributing to strong audience engagement. The film's franchise potential is substantial, with narrative frameworks that allow exploration of global conspiracies, expanded missions of the Beekeeper's organization, and continued psychological and ethical development of Adam Clay. Recurring motifs and thematic continuity ensure that sequels or spin-offs can maintain aesthetic and narrative cohesion, while providing opportunities for cross-media storytelling. In conclusion, The Beekeeper exemplifies modern action thrillers that transcend traditional genre boundaries. Its seamless integration of high-stakes spectacle, psychological depth, ethical inquiry, and thematic sophistication creates a multi-layered cinematic experience. Adam Clay's disciplined, morally guided approach contrasts with Derek Danforth's corruption, reinforcing themes of personal responsibility, vigilance, and integrity. The careful orchestration of cinematography, sound, visual symbolism, and narrative pacing enhances suspense, immersion, and thematic resonance. By merging entertainment with intellectual and moral engagement, The Beekeeper delivers a compelling, thought-provoking, and immersive film experience, establishing itself as a benchmark for contemporary action cinema and laying the foundation for potential franchise expansion. The Beekeeper, 2024, directed by David Ayer and starring Jason Statham as Adam Clay, is a contemporary action thriller that blends high-octane spectacle with moral and psychological depth. Produced by Millennium Media, the film follows Adam, a retired intelligence operative who has retreated to a quiet life as a beekeeper. His life is disrupted when his close friend Eloise Parker falls victim to a criminal conspiracy orchestrated by the corrupt billionaire Derek Danforth. Adam's grief propels him on a disciplined and strategic mission to dismantle the network, confronting both physical threats and moral dilemmas. The story weaves together suspense, tactical intelligence, and ethical responsibility, presenting a protagonist who acts with precision, principle, and moral clarity. From the outset, Adam's personal loss is mirrored in the visual storytelling. His apiary, depicted in warm, natural light, represents order, discipline, and ethical grounding. Bees and hives function as recurring motifs, symbolizing cooperation, vigilance, and structured intelligence. In contrast, Derek Danforth's corporate environments, depicted with cold, artificial lighting, communicate moral detachment and systemic corruption. These visual contrasts are reinforced through cinematography that alternates between expansive wide shots and tight, suspenseful framing, immersing the audience in both the narrative and psychological tension. The film's sound design and score, composed by David Sardi and Jared Michael Fry, enhance its immersive qualities. The buzzing of bees, both diegetic and symbolic, underscores themes of vigilance and discipline, while ambient tension and percussive bursts amplify suspense during action sequences. Realistic environmental sounds maintain narrative clarity, allowing the audience to remain aligned with Adam's perspective as he navigates high-stakes scenarios. Action sequences in The Beekeeper are meticulously choreographed to reflect character psychology and ethical reasoning. Infiltrations, combat, and the climactic duel with Derek emphasize Adam's strategic, principled approach in contrast to the antagonist's chaotic reliance on brute force and manipulation. Every tactical choice, whether neutralizing a guard, improvising with environmental elements, or planning a multi-stage infiltration, is grounded in moral and intellectual deliberation, reinforcing the film's central themes of integrity, vigilance, and ethical action. Supporting characters, including Wallace Westwild, the retired CIA mentor, and Verona Parker, the ethically conflicted FBI agent, enrich the narrative with additional layers of psychological and moral complexity. Wallace embodies reflective wisdom, providing guidance that informs Adam's tactical and ethical decisions. Verona navigates institutional constraints, balancing procedural duty with moral recognition, illustrating the tension between law and conscience. Minor characters, including informants and corporate insiders, highlight complicity, fear, and the nuanced challenges of ethical decision-making in complex systems. Symbolism pervades the film, with bees, hives, and water imagery reinforcing themes of cooperation, adaptability, and reflection. Lighting, camera angles, and sound design further accentuate ethical and psychological tension, ensuring that visual and auditory elements serve both narrative and thematic purposes. The film's careful orchestration of cinematography, sound, and pacing creates a cohesive, immersive experience that engages both the intellect and emotions of the audience. The Beekeeper has made a significant cultural impact, praised for combining thrilling action with ethical inquiry and psychological depth. Jason Statham's performance, along with the supporting cast's nuanced portrayals, has been widely lauded, while David Ayer's direction skillfully balances suspense, thematic resonance, and narrative clarity. The film's marketing emphasized both Statham's physicality and the story's contemporary relevance, contributing to strong audience engagement and a global box office gross of over $160 million on a $40 million budget. The narrative structure and thematic richness provide strong franchise potential. Sequels could explore new global conspiracies, expanded missions of the Beekeeper's organization, and deeper ethical and psychological challenges. Recurring visual motifs and narrative consistency ensure continuity while allowing fresh narrative exploration, making the film both a commercial and intellectual foundation for a broader cinematic universe. In summary, The Beekeeper stands as a benchmark for contemporary action thrillers, demonstrating how high-stakes spectacle can coexist with psychological depth and ethical sophistication. Adam Clay's disciplined, morally guided actions contrast sharply with Derek Danforth's corruption, highlighting the film's central themes of integrity, personal responsibility, and vigilance. Through meticulous cinematography, sound design, choreography, and narrative pacing, the film delivers a layered, immersive experience that engages audiences intellectually, emotionally, and viscerally. By combining entertainment, moral inquiry, and psychological nuance, The Beekeeper elevates the action thriller genre and establishes a compelling foundation for potential sequels and franchise expansion.